think it's hard to show someone else what to do with their money when you have not done it yourself with your own money. And everything that you're asking someone to go through financially is something that you should do yourself, because I don't really think it's fair to ask somebody to do something with their money, something that you haven't done on your own. Because for many people, having to allocate their funds and things that they're not familiar with, or to give up liquidity, or to actually budget, or for people who are starting to invest for the first time, it's a big undertaking. So, it's good to kind of gone through it yourself and to know what it feels like and to know the benefits and the drawbacks of it, so that you can more effectively relay that to others and guide people through an experience that you've already had.
Welcome, Model FAs. David Dissel here, president of Model FA and your host of the Model FA podcast. We have Mike Hanna with us today. Mike is a graduate of New York University, graduated cum laude with a Bachelor of Arts degree in politics and philosophy, and has also earned a master's in business administration with a concentration in finance from the Stern School of Business at NYU. Currently, he maintains his Series 7 and 66, as well as life and health insurance. And he's also obtained the CFP certification, which all of you listening knows what that is, as well as the RICP and the AEP designations. He's a qualifying member of the $1 Million Roundtable, which is comprised of an international network of the top 5% of financial professionals. And they serve clients with exemplary performance and the highest standards of ethics, knowledge, and productivity. He is also an active member of the Financial Planning Association, the Society of Financial Service Professionals, the Association for Advanced Life Underwriting, the Estate Planning Council of New York City, and the National Association of Insurance and Financial Advisors. And on a more personal note, Mike stays involved in his community, volunteering as a math tutor for underprivileged students. He sponsors numerous disadvantaged children around the world through Children International, which is an organization that helps children escape poverty and achieve their dreams. He also donates to several charities, including UNICEF and CARE, and stays active in the NYU alumni community as an investor of the Haskins Giving Society. Outside of that, he enjoys traveling the world, jazz, chess, and the culinary arts and water sports. So with that being said, Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, David.
I'm excited about today's podcast, where really the topic that we're going to be discussing is the whole idea of making sure that you are the landscaper that cuts his lawn first as opposed to last. And one of the topics that we chatted through is really around creating and maintaining financial infrastructure. So I'm curious to know, what's your advice as it relates to the infrastructure that advisors should put in place for themselves personally? And how does that differ, or how is it the same as the advice that they're giving clients?
Yeah, I guess it kind of goes back to our high school motto, which was we learn to do by doing. I guess a more common expression of that out there is we lead by example. But I think it's very important for financial planners or financial advisors to take care of their own finances, because it puts them in a position where they can really lead by example. And I think it's hard to show someone else what to do with their money when you have not done it yourself with your own money. And everything that you're asking someone to go through financially is something that you should do yourself, because I don't really think it's fair to ask somebody to do something with their money that you haven't done on your own. Because for many people, having to allocate their funds and things that they're not familiar with, or to give up liquidity, or to actually budget, or just for people who are starting to invest for the first time, it's a big undertaking. So, it's good to kind of gone through it yourself and to know what it feels like and to know the benefits and the drawbacks of it, so that you can more effectively relay that to others and guide people through an experience that you already had.
Now, tell us a little bit about how you got started in the business and the advice that we're going to talk through today about making sure that your own stuff is in order. Is that something that you started right away when you got into this business, or did you kind of morph towards that over time? Help us understand how you got started, both in business as well as this philosophy.
Yeah. So in my previous life, I worked in futures and options, and that's a very high leverage, highly speculative endeavor. It was really exciting. In my 20s, I did that for many years, and it was fun and financially exhilarating, but it really wasn't core wealth accumulation. And I was making a good income at the time and having a great lifestyle. And then I started saving regularly. And it started with $250 a month and built from there and just kind of kept going more and more systematic and growing. And then seeing wealth accumulate and kind of following it for a while became really attractive, as opposed to a faster lifestyle with bigger ups and downs. And that's kind of how I got into the business, because I kind of gravitated from, helping rich individuals and rich institutions kind of make more money, just helping hardworking professionals build real wealth over time, and kind of manage their assets and kind of just help to ensure that there's something substantial and something meaningful to show for the years of work. And after doing it for myself, I started really appreciating the process and the results, and just kind of had a craving to share that with everyday people. And that's what's led me into the business and kind of kept me thriving in the business.
That's cool. It seems like you had sort of that personal experience of getting your house in order, and perhaps that was sort of the precipice of wanting to help other folks do the same, seeing the impact that it had on your scenario and in your life. Now, I know when we spoke previously, we kind of chuckled a little bit when we talked about how, the current market conditions being down as far as it is at the moment. We're recording this at the end of July, so we're still down. And I'm curious to know, let's say where, an advisor's listening to this and maybe they don't have their house in order and they haven't done a great job saving, because for the last decade or so, it's just every year, whether they bring on new clients or not, their revenue is increasing, most likely. What can folks do now, if anything, to be better buttoned up on their own personal finances when they see perhaps a 20-25% dip in their revenue? Is that possible? Do we need to wait for it to rebound? What does that look like?
I think perspective is important. I think it's important to take stock of what you have and what you need to have. And so, if we're kind of just addressing the response that someone might have to a 20% or 30% or more drop in their assets, context is everything, I would say. So it's important to kind of make sure that you're managing your cash. And, if you've done your planning properly, you should have some emergency funds on hand. And also you have faith in the markets. And, historically, they've always recovered. And, we don't know what the future holds, but again, historically, they've generally recovered, and time tends to heal all. And so it's really a matter of, I think, remaining calm and retaining real perspective of what to expect with your finances. And perhaps it's a little bit more conservative living, or it's a little bit more modest, or it's, time to brace yourself a bit and to kind of scale back a little bit and let this unfold. But mayhem, concern, worry, all those things don't help, right? And I think those things kind of flood the popular mindset, and I think to no one's benefit at all.
Well, I think too, staying with the theme of ensuring that you're doing what you're recommending that your clients do, the tone that you're able to use, the confidence that you're able to have when, maybe you're recommending some of your clients do that same thing, which is, reel it in a little bit and, tighten the belt and make sure that we're not over leveraged, we're not overspending. If you can speak to that from experience and share examples as to what some of the things you've cut out in your life, that probably goes a long way, I would imagine, as well, because you're speaking alongside them as opposed to speaking like from above and sort of smoke and mirrors because, your house is, burning down at the current moment.
Yeah. More so than cutting back, I think, we try to maintain reasonable financial lifestyles across the board, and we try to coach our clients to do that. Living within your means is always an important thing to do. So hopefully that hasn't changed. I would say, though, that from experience, something that's tough to maintain, but important to maintain, and something that we've been maintaining personally and continually advise people to do is to continue making contributions when the market's down. We've seen a lot of clients say, well, should we stop? Should we pull out? Should we do things? I'm like, that's the hard work, is to continue those contributions while the market's down. And whether it's your 401k, your brokerage account, or life insurance account, whatever it is, it's important to keep up with the accumulation, even when the market conditions aren't so exciting or favorable. I'd even say it's a real opportunity. This is kind of where extra money is made. And as tough as it is to put money into something that then loses value shortly thereafter, again and again and again, we remain confident that in the future, you'll be rewarded for that extra emotional work that you're doing today.
Well, it's funny too. So I'm pulling up a text that this was actually right before we logged on, like 30 minutes before. I got a text from my girlfriend about someone that she knows, said, hey, can you ask David a question for me? My 401k is losing a lot of money. Will you ask him if I should reduce the amount of my contributions? This is like real time, real life, like today.
Yeah.
And I responded back. I was in the meeting, so I was kind of like short and to the point. I go, without knowing her situation, she should, in all caps, increase her contribution. Everything is on sale. And then I put in quotes, this is the only sale where people leave the store when it happens.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to me. And I don't want to discount the psychological impact that it has on folks, because it's real. But it's amazing to me that if, a department store or whatever store you typically shop, if they said, hey, come on in, everything's 25% off, there'd be a line out the door, and they'd have to manage, the inflow of customers.
Yeah, that's right. No, it's true. It's amazing how people shy away from it. And the more is that when you do the math on those different trajectories of maintaining or increasing your contributions versus reducing or ceasing your contributions 5 years from now and 10 years from now, they're markedly different results. This is good work to do. I mean, to maintain the contributions or increase the contributions right now really, really does you well in the future.
Yeah, I think the advisors that do it right, outside of making sure that they're practicing what they preach, essentially, are the ones during these times understanding that there's a lot of prospects out there. There's a lot of friends, coworkers, and family members of the clients that you're currently serving that have questions. Mm-hmm. And if you go on the offense during this time, there's a number of clients that we work with where even with a 25% decrease in revenue for their book of business, they've offset that with client acquisition. And the folks that we come across that aren't necessarily looking to grow, maybe they're at the tail end of their career, I still get them to try and grow from a defensive standpoint, where whether it's people drawing from their accounts or these market conditions, it's like you got to be in the habit of client acquisition regardless. That way, when stuff like this happens and the market goes down, you don't need to relearn all the skills that it took to develop that business in the first place. So I think it's important for advisors to understand and do what perhaps you're recommending to your clients as well, where, hey, think less about the account value that you currently have and focus more on how can we increase cash flow to offset, some of the declines that we're seeing now.
Yeah, that all makes sense. Another thing I told clients is don't focus on the account values as much as the number of shares you own. Because the number of shares is going up while the account value may be stagnant or declining. However, that makes you very well poised for recovery.
Yeah, and you get to ride the wave back up.
That's right. That's right. And keeping the right mindset in times like these also is naturally defensive and, kind of keeps assets growing and moving in the right direction. It doesn't benefit anyone when the assets go out in times like these. There's always an outlier. There's always people who are going to do that. But historically, they're the ones who hurt themselves the most. The staying power is the biggest benefit.
More on that text thread that I left out, but The follow-up question that was asked was, well, should I change to more conservative funds? And it's one of those things where, well, it's kind of a shoulda, coulda, woulda moment, right? If anyone can be a great investor when they have hindsight, but, making those changes based on emotion are kind of what bites you in the butt moving forward.
Yeah.
One question or topic that we had discussed, and I want you to unpack this so that I have a better understanding as to what exactly you meant by it. But in talking about getting your financial house in order, just like you're doing with your clients, you mentioned something to the effect of making sure to begin with the end in mind as to what you're building. Can you help explain that a little bit more? And then more specifically, how does that change the advisor's plan for their own wealth accumulation, if at all?
Yeah. I would say, just to answer your second question first, I don't think it changes anything. I think it keeps you wed to the plan. If you understand the destination that you're headed toward, it kind of fortifies the steps you're taking to get there, I would say. So if we begin with the end in mind, if we say, hey, we want to create this income stream later in life, in 10 years, in 20 and 30 years, or we want to have this type of lifestyle, we know we want to put this away every month or every week or every year in order to get there. As long as you keep your eyes on the prize, which is that goal, that long-term goal of having those assets or having the income from those assets, it keeps you more comfortable in times like these. So, I think keeping the goal in mind, keeping the end in mind keeps you on track. If you refocus on that always, you don't mind this as much. It's never comfortable to go through. And I'll say personally, it's not comfortable. I've personally shifted from looking at points to percentages, and again, from dollars in the accounts to shares that are accumulated. Like anything to move your mind off the annoying fact that the value of your assets is declining. And the more money you have, the more money you're losing. It's just, mathematical facts. But with that, the more you stand to gain over time. And again, if you can stay focused on the goal of, hey, we're going to get to X dollars, and everyone's different. It could be $1 million, it could be $10 million, it could be $50 or $100 million. Whatever your goal is, you want to stay on track to meet that. And, letting a little market turbulence, which historically, again, does not last forever. A few months, 6 months, a year, 18 months, the time passes and it'll be off and running again. But that turbulence, just the point is make sure that it doesn't throw you off track. And I think keeping an eye on what you set out to accomplish to begin with really helps you stay on track with your goals.
Yeah. And to take that a step further, I think, let's say someone's, in their 30s or 40s and they have a, 20 or 30 year investment horizon as to, what they want their business, their financial planning practice to generate for them and their family. Sometimes that can be so far away where a month or a year that they don't hit their savings goal, it's like, oh, what's the big deal? I got 19 more years left or whatever the situation is. So I know for me personally, that's been the case. And once I boiled that down to monthly and quarterly and even as granular as per paycheck, type of goals, it's really helped follow through on the commitment to be on pace to those longer term goals. And like I have a client as an example where he's got these grand old visions. He's super far away from them because he's in his late 20s. So he just, needs to continue to build his business and work in that direction. But he has a goal to have a certain amount of money to put towards his wedding in 18 months. And I get a text from him every other week. Hey, I saved X amount of money. I saved that. And there's some excitement around it. So to the extent that you need to kind of gamify the process along the way, I think could be really helpful. And having someone close to you that can celebrate that with you or that can hold you accountable to following through on what you said you can do. Whatever silly little tricks and people you need to bring in to help, whether it's a study group or other people at the firm, depending on kind of where you're housed at, all that type of stuff is super, super helpful from what I've gathered anyways.
I agree fully. I try to do that for our clients. In our reviews, I always celebrate the accomplishments because they're worth celebrating. What we're setting out to accomplish is wonderful. And, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step. And every contribution, every quarterly review, every time we're talking, we're moving toward that. And it's great. The clients, who've been doing it longer know it. There's definitely an element of faith in the beginning, right? Because it takes time to build these things of value. But time elapses and the value is created, and it's beautiful to celebrate. And, we have a lot of clients who have reached wonderful goals and still have decades ahead. And it's wonderful to see, what the future will bring. And on a personal note, and I really empathize with my clients who are struggling to put money away in times like these. It just doesn't feel good. And I do it personally, even on a weekly basis. And my wife tells me you can always slow down if you don't feel like. I'm like, no. You got to stay the course. And I say every week contributions go out and I just feel great about it. It's a tough pill to swallow sometimes, but wonderful result to generate.
I think the point you hit on in terms of empathy as well, clients can feel whether you're actually empathetic because you're in it with them, or they can also tell if you're just kind of blowing smoke to try and get them to keep contributing or stay the course, for your own personal benefit. So if you're kind of right alongside with them, they can feel that. I'm curious, Michael, and I've heard mixed reviews on this, so I'm curious to know what your thoughts are. I have some advisors who go as far as to share their personal financial plan with their clients. Contribution amounts, the goals that they have, asset balances, the way that they're invested. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that that's a good idea, a bad idea? Do you do that? I'm just kind of curious.
I think it's to each their own, honestly. I think it's whatever's comfortable. I mean, I would say, we as a practice group work with, 600, almost 700 clients now and growing regularly. So there's definitely some clients that I know on a more personal level that I've known for longer who may have a clearer sense of my personal financial picture. As a matter of practice, I don't know that it benefits the client to know necessarily. If they'd like to know, I think they should be welcome to that information. I think that's totally fair and reasonable if they wish to know. But I think it's more about process. I think process is what unifies the advisor with the client, not so much the amount or, the account balance. Because everyone's at different stages in their careers and different income thresholds, different savings capacities, different time frames, different risk profiles. So they experience different volatility and different returns. And I think it's kind of like, the risk I think associated with sharing is then the risk of comparing. And I don't think that's beneficial for many clients. Because if a client's 20 years older than me or it's 15 years younger than I am, then, there's no reason for our finances to resemble each other necessarily.
Yeah, I like the idea about process in terms of the types of accounts. I would assume this is what you mean, the types of accounts that you're contributing to, how frequently you're contributing to them, how often you're reviewing, your financial picture. Is that what you meant by process? Or?
Yes, that's exactly what I meant. And I would say, just generally speaking, a client could be 5 years older or 5 or 10 years older or younger than I am. But let's say we're all in the accumulation phase. We're all building wealth, and I could be in my 40s, they could be in their 20s or 30s or in their 40s or 50s, but we're not retired yet and we're working and we're growing. I think that's, where we should have real similarity. And that's right. Like the things that I'm doing for myself, I would encourage my clients to do, and I would never ask my clients to do something that I wouldn't do with my own money. How much exactly goes into what? That's going to vary, I think, person to person. But then, for clients who are in retirement, and I'm not in retirement, but say they are in retirement, I would never recommend them to do something that I couldn't envision myself doing with my own money. Like I have my own retirement plans of I'm building assets, and I'm like, when I turn this certain age or whenever it's time for me to retire, I will plan on putting a chunk of money into this type of strategy. And those are things that I feel comfortable advising clients who are in retirement because I know I would do it with my own money. I look forward to the time when I will.
For sure. Now, would you suggest that an advisor for their own financial plan, should they do that on their own? Should they have another advisor that they hire that helps them with their own personal financial plan? How do you view how they should follow through on that? Because for me, I like the idea. I can let myself off the hook. I like the idea of having someone else hold me accountable to doing certain
Yeah.
things.
Hmm.
Is it kind of a personal choice, or what are your thoughts on that?
No, I think it's unequivocally a great idea to have an advisor. I think advisors should have advisors. Yeah, I think it's kind of like, it's like saying like, oh, you're in great shape. Should you have a trainer? It's all upside,
Mm,
and you could be someone who's not in great financial shape or lets himself off easily, and kind of like slips up. And that's definitely a reason to have an advisor. And you could be someone who's quite meticulous and kind of disciplined about it. And it's also good to have an advisor, just to have a second set of eyes on what you're doing. It's always great to have a sounding board. It's great to have someone who can support you, someone to report to, or someone to keep you on track, if you're sliding off track.
well, I think too, my mind just went to business development when you come across, because we've all come across clients who maybe they've been do-it-yourselfers for 10, 20, 30 years, however long, and whether
Yeah.
someone referred them or whatever the reason is that they're meeting with you now, if there's an objection around, well, I can just do this on my own. If you can follow up and share with them the fact that you're designated and you have X amount of years of experience in this industry, and yet you have your own advisor, that probably holds a decent amount of weight in the sales process as well. If there's an objection of why would I pay for this?
Yeah, absolutely. I honestly don't get a lot of objection as to why I would pay for this, but certainly, yeah, no, it's something that, if you are an advisor, work with an advisor, I mean, it kind of shows the value of it. I hope that our clients do find value in what we do. And I think, they're with us for a reason. I mean, her retention rate's very high. But I still maintain, though, that the biggest value that we really provide people is in developing and maintaining the infrastructure of wealth accumulation or wealth protection. It's not necessarily that, we have the best returns or like the most efficient, or I mean, I think we do. I think we have great returns. And I think there's a lot of efficiency, but getting the structure in place where it's like before we met, they were just working and putting money in the bank and doing what they thought was best, maybe buying a property or trying to do it on their own and saying, hey, like we can set these accounts up. We can put these contributions in at this frequency, at this dollar amount, and we'll review and we'll grow. That is the biggest change. That's what's like, as I say, going into Technicolor from black and white. That really changes the game and the trajectory of the wealth accumulation is having those patterns and maintaining them and growing them.
I agree. If I'm an advisor and I'm listening, if this would resonate with me, but my question would be if I'm the proverbial landscaper who cuts his lawn last, if at all, I want to make sure that we wrap this up with specific action steps that they should take to better their situation, regardless of if their revenue is, 50,000 or $50 million. What are some action steps that an advisor who's listening to this show right now should take to put themselves in a better financial position for themselves and their family?
They should do all the things that they're telling their clients to do. So it depends on specifically what they're advising. But if you're telling your client to put money away into a brokerage account or to a life insurance policy or into a 401k or a SEP or whatever it is, you should be doing that. You should be doing that as much as possible. Because I think if you're not actually saving the money and you're not investing and you're not financially planning like you're advising others to financially plan, and you're not actually accumulating like you're advising others to accumulate, and you're not dealing with the ups and downs and the liquidity or the illiquidity that you're asking your clients to deal with, then you're merely practicing theoretically. And that may be enough to get your practice going, to maintain it. But you will never, I don't think you'll ever reach the same depth and the same breadth as when you're doing it actually.
Yeah. And I have a client who he's been in the business for, 30 years or so. He's bringing in like $1.5 million to $2 million, depending on the year. And I say depending on the year because some of his revenue is recurring, other revenue is insurance based. And it got to the point because he's been doing fine saving, but he has no idea when he can retire, or if he can retire, which he can, but he doesn't have any clarity. And I was like, dude, why don't you just hire an advisor to put together the financial plan for you? Because you're dragging your feet on it. I know you have the skill set to do it, but just delegate that to someone else and let them tell you the answer. So he's in the process of doing that right now. So I guess my point of bringing that up is if you're listening to this, like, don't be afraid to suppress your ego and just ask one of your peers or reach out to, an advisor in your community and just say, I want a second set of eyes on the things that I've been doing, or I need some accountability, quite frankly, to follow through on what I know I need to do. But that takes, someone who can be humble and suppress their ego and, not feel, different or less than because maybe you haven't done the things that you should be doing up to this point. But the first step is just, what Michael said, which is start to do the things that you help your clients with. So all that stuff makes sense. It resonates with me quite a bit. The first half of my advisor career, I was the landscaper who didn't cut their lawn or cut their lawn last. And it was stressful. I felt like a fraud, to a degree when I was giving advice to these people. Yet behind the scenes, I wasn't doing any of that. And the moment in time that I switched and started taking it more seriously and actually put things in place to accumulate wealth in a systematic fashion, I don't know if it was the confidence or the buy-in of my own advice, but my business grew as a result of having my stuff together. So I would highly encourage you, if you're listening, to take that step, because not only is it going to benefit you and your family and the goals that you have, but it's going to benefit the clients that you've yet to meet, because you're going to have more confidence in advising them and have an impact on their life as well. It comes full circle.
Absolutely.
So with that being said, to transition slightly, if this is one of your first episodes listening, we like to distill a reading list for our audience, and no better way to do so than to ask our guests what one of their books is that they've consumed that's had an impact on them. And I've actually never heard of this book, Michael, so I'm curious to know what it's about and kind of the impact that it's had on you. The one that you noted is called Kitchen Confidential. And we actually had a little bit of a kitchen conversation before we started recording with that tomahawk steak. So I'm not sure if it's related to that or totally different, but what's that all about?
That's funny. I remember I was asked, maybe it was out of context, like, what's your favorite book? That's one of my favorite books of all time. I didn't know if it was supposed to be my favorite financial book.
No, not about financial book, just something that has resonated with you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, Kitchen Confidential is one of my favorites, if not my favorite book of all time. And I think the takeaway from that book that I love about it is that it's a real testament to grittiness. And it's a real testament to really doing, the things that you talk about. And it's really about the underbelly of working in a kitchen. And it's Anthony Bourdain's story. But it's a great book. And it's an inside peek of what it takes to really be great in the culinary industry. But a lot of that grit and a lot of that passion and a lot of that cutting through and getting to the essence of what you're working in that leads to greatness it parallels to what we do as financial advisors, and all in the spirit of taking it intimately and taking it seriously and being passionate and measuring and counting and reviewing and growing and expanding your knowledge base and kind of exploring what else is out there to do more and what can work and to hit certain thresholds and grow on them. It all is a real carryover.
Well, I'm glad you brought that book up because you hit on a good point. This book is about a totally different industry, and there's so much gold in other industries and the things that they're doing that are having an impact on their business. And I find oftentimes advisors kind of stay within the confines of our industry, and it's important to kind of branch out and see what nuggets you can take from other industries and implement them into your business and in your life as well. So you may have seen me looking over in the other direction, but I just scooped it up. It'll be here tomorrow. Between always looking to be more gritty and having the passion for cooking myself, I think that's a perfect book to add to the queue, so to speak. So I appreciate that recommendation.
Absolutely. It's a great read.
Love it.
I really enjoy it.
Well, for those of you who are listening, similar to what I just did, taking immediate action, whether it's the book that you want to check out or taking your own financial planning seriously, definitely just take action. Do it immediately. You won't regret it. So with that being said, Michael, if I'm an advisor, I'm listening to this and I would love to follow along with your journey and connect with you, where are the best places for them to find you?
You could email me at mhanna@azurawealth.com. That's MHANNA at AZURA wealth.com. You can reach out directly to my office if we still use the telephone, 212-578-2722. 578-2722.
Awesome. Well, for those of you who are listening, we appreciate your time, your attention. If you would be so kind as to share the episode, leave a review. We'd really appreciate that. Gain some more eyeballs with those actions. So we'd really appreciate a share and a review. Michael, I appreciate you spending some time with me today and all of our listeners, and hope our paths cross soon as well.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And one other thing I'll add, another way to reach the philosophy or the mindset, the process is through the book, Get Your Money Right, which is on Amazon that I authored. That's available as well. And a lot of the things that we practice in our practice group and a lot of the financial mindset and action items to really accumulate and protect the wealth is all written in that book that I wrote there.
Awesome. Well, I'm in the midst of buying a copy of that as well. So you should get a little notification on your end that a book is sold, a couple bucks in your pocket.
Thank you, David.
I appreciate you sharing that.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Take care.
Bye.